My name is Marcus Johnson. I'm 17 years old, and until that Saturday afternoon in Beverly Hills, I believed that hard work and intelligence were enough to earn respect. I was wrong. Sometimes you need to prove your worth in the most public and humiliating way possible before people finally see you as a human being. If you've ever been underestimated because of your appearance, leave a like on this video. This story is about the day a racist billionaire tried to humiliate me for entertainment and ended up changing my life forever. It was 2:30 p.m. when Richard Sterling walked into Sterling Motors, the most exclusive luxury car dealership in Beverly Hills, where I'd been working part-time for 6 months. The smell of Italian leather and light filtered through bulletproof glass created an atmosphere of wealth that constantly reminded me of where I didn't belong. At least that's what everyone there thought. Sterling wore an $8,000 Armani suit, a $45,000 Rolex Daytona on his wrist, and carried that specific arrogance of men who had never heard no in their lives. At 52, he had built a tech empire valued at $3.2 billion and made sure everyone knew it, especially people like me. "Where's a real salesperson?" he asked, looking right through me as if I were invisible. Not the cleaning boy. I wore my impeccable dealership uniform, white polo shirt, black dress pants, polished shoes I'd bought with my first paycheck. But to Sterling, I was just another young black kid who shouldn't be there. "Good afternoon, sir," I replied politely. "Can I help you with something?" He laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the marble showroom. "Kid, I came to buy a $2.3 million Bugatti Chiron Sport. You probably can't even pronounce Bugatti correctly." Actually, I spoke French fluently, so I knew most Americans pronounced it wrong. But I kept my expression neutral. At 17, I'd already learned that correcting powerful people rarely ended well for me. Mr. Davidson, the manager, appeared like lightning when he realized Sterling was being served by me. "Mr. Sterling, what an honor to have you here. Marcus, get back to your duties. I'll personally take care of Mr. Sterling." As I walked away, I heard Sterling comment loud enough for me to hear, "These kids today have no respect. In my day, they knew their place." I continued organizing brochures at the reception desk, pretending not to hear the venomous comments that flowed naturally from Sterling's mouth. My mother, a nurse who worked double shifts to give me a decent education, always said, "Marcus, let your work speak for you." So I worked. I studied Italian with YouTube videos during lunch. I practiced Mandarin with phone apps. I read about German automotive engineering on weekends. But that afternoon, while Sterling examined a metallic blue Bugatti, a conversation in Italian caught my attention. A customer was trying to impress his girlfriend by describing the car's specifications, but he was butchering the pronunciation and completely confusing the technical terms. "Questo motore ha 16 cilindri," he said, pronouncing every word wrong and claiming the engine had 16 cylinders when it actually had 12. Without thinking, I murmured quietly, "12 cilindri, non 16." The silence that followed was deadly. Sterling stopped examining the car and slowly turned toward me, his eyes gleaming with something that looked like cruel amusement. "What did you say, kid?" My heart raced. I had broken the cardinal rule. Keep your mouth shut. "Nothing, sir, sorry." No. Sterling walked toward me with the smile of a predator who had just identified his prey. "You were correcting his Italian, weren't you?" The Italian customer blushed with shame. Other customers stopped their conversations to watch. Mr. Davidson looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "I thought I heard something," Sterling continued, pulling his iPhone from his pocket. "How interesting. A ghetto kid who thinks he knows languages. I'm not from the ghetto," I thought. I live in Inglewood, study at Westchester High, maintain a 4.0 GPA, and was accepted to UCLA with a full scholarship. But explaining that would only make things worse. "Mr. Sterling," Mr. Davidson intervened nervously. "Marcus is an exemplary employee, but he's still learning when to speak and when not to speak." "Oh, he's going to learn all right," Sterling laughed, now openly filming. "Kid, what's your name?" "Marcus Johnson, sir." "Marcus Johnson," he repeated for the camera. "Let's do an interesting test." "You think you're smart? Think you know languages?" I felt everyone in the showroom approaching. It was like hyenas circling wounded prey. Beverly Hills women with $10,000 purses, businessmen with Patek Philippe watches, young heirs driving Ferraris borrowed from their parents, all there to watch my public humiliation. "I don't claim to be special, sir." "Modesty is adorable," Sterling smiled. "But let's test that modesty. I'm going to make a challenge, and I'm going to record everything for my 2.8 million Instagram followers. He gestured grandly to the Bugatti behind him. If you can pronounce Koenigsegg Jesko Absolut correctly in Swedish, not just pronounce it, but explain what it means, I'll buy that Bugatti for you. 2.3 million, kid. Money you've never seen in your life. The showroom exploded in laughter. Someone shouted, "It's a prank!" Another commented, "This kid probably doesn't even know where Sweden is." Sterling raised his hand to silence the audience. But when you fail, and you will fail miserably, I want you to publicly apologize for pretending to know something you clearly don't know. And I want you to admit you were trying to show off above your station, Mr. Davidson whispered urgently in my ear. Marcus, just apologize and go back to work. Don't make this worse. But something inside me snapped. Not anger exactly, but a quiet determination I'd inherited from my mother, who immigrated from Haiti speaking only Creole and now supervised an entire hospital wing. She didn't just learn English, she mastered it. She didn't just survive, she thrived, and she taught me 7 languages for a reason. I accept your challenge, Mr. Sterling. The crowd's laughter died instantly. Sterling's confident smile flickered for just a moment before returning stronger. Excellent. This is going to be entertaining. He positioned his phone for the perfect angle, making sure to capture both of us in the frame. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a young man here who thinks he can pronounce one of the most difficult Swedish automotive terms correctly. This should be educational for everyone. The circle of onlookers tightened. I could see the excitement in their eyes, the anticipation of watching someone from my background fail spectacularly. They were already composing the social media posts they'd share later. Before we begin, Sterling announced, let me establish my credentials. I speak 6 languages fluently: English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, and Mandarin. I've traveled to 30 countries and own automotive companies in 4 of them. I know exactly how this Swedish phrase should sound. He turned to me with theatrical condescension. Now, young Marcus Johnson from... Where did you say you were from? Inglewood, California. Inglewood, he repeated slowly, making sure the camera caught his emphasis. Tell us about your language education. Which prestigious private schools did you attend? Did your parents hire Swedish tutors? The crowd chuckled at his obvious sarcasm. Everyone knew the setup. Poor black kid from Inglewood couldn't possibly compete with a globally educated billionaire. I'm self-taught, sir. Self-taught, Sterling exclaimed with mock amazement. YouTube University, I presume? How absolutely precious. He cleared his throat dramatically. Very well. The phrase is Koenigsegg Jesko Absolut. It's the name of a Swedish hypercar, and I want you to pronounce it perfectly in Swedish pronunciation. Then explain what absolute means in this automotive context. Sterling looked directly into his phone camera. For my followers who don't know, this is literally impossible unless you have extensive knowledge of Swedish phonetics and automotive engineering. This young man is about to learn a very expensive lesson about humility. The showroom fell completely silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of Beverly Hills traffic. Dozens of eyes focused on me, waiting for my inevitable failure. I closed my eyes for a moment, hearing my mother's voice from last night when she came home exhausted from her double shift. Marcus, your languages are not just words. They are bridges to worlds that others cannot see. Use them wisely. I opened my eyes and looked directly at Sterling's camera. The phrase you requested is Koenigsegg Jesko Absolut, I began, my voice steady and clear. In proper Swedish pronunciation, it would be Koenigsegg Jesko Absolut. My pronunciation was flawless. The rolled consonants, the precise vowel sounds, the subtle tonal shifts that distinguished native Swedish from American attempts. Sterling's confident smile wavered slightly, but he pressed on. Lucky guess. Now explain what absolute means. Absolute in this context refers to the track-focused variant of the Jesko hypercar, I continued in perfect Swedish before switching to English. It features reduced downforce compared to the standard Jesko, optimized for maximum speed rather than cornering. The word choice reflects the absolute pursuit of top speed, hence absolute. With projected capabilities exceeding 30 miles per hour under ideal conditions. The silence was deafening. Sterling's face had gone pale. Several people in the crowd exchanged confused glances. This wasn't following the script they'd expected. The Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute, I continued, features a 1,600 horsepower twin-turbo V8 engine developed by Christian von Koenigsegg's team in Ängelholm, Sweden. The name Jesko honors Christian's father, Jesko von Koenigsegg, while Absolute represents the philosophical pursuit of absolute speed. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Holy shit." He actually knows this stuff. Sterling was no longer smiling. You looked this up beforehand. Someone told you I was coming. Actually, Mr. Sterling, I said quietly, I speak 7 languages fluently. Swedish is one of them. Would you like me to continue this conversation in svenska? Without waiting for his response, I switched to perfect Swedish. Jag kan fortsätta på svenska om du föredrar det. Eller kanske franska, italienska, mandarin. Du sa att du talar 6 språk, jag talar 7. The translation hung in the air like a challenge. I can continue in Swedish if you prefer. Or maybe French? Italian, Mandarin? You said you speak 6 languages. I speak 7. Sterling's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. For the first time in his adult life, the man who owned everything was speechless. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a linguistics professor from UCLA who happened to be car shopping, stepped forward from the crowd. Young man, your Swedish pronunciation is absolutely perfect. Where did you study? Self-taught, ma'am. YouTube, language apps, conversation partners online, Swedish films with subtitles. Remarkable, she breathed. Your phonetic accuracy suggests near-native fluency. The crowd was now murmuring with amazement instead of mockery. Phone cameras that had been positioned to capture my humiliation were now recording something entirely different. Sterling finally found his voice, but it came out cracked and uncertain. This is some kind of setup. No one learns Swedish from YouTube. Du har fel, I replied in Swedish. Du underskattar vad passion och hårt arbete kan åstadkomma. You're wrong. You underestimate what passion and hard work can accomplish. Then I switched to French. Monsieur Sterling, vous avez dit que vous parlez français. Voulez-vous continuer en français? Then Italian. O forse preferisce l'italiano dato che ha corretto male quel cliente poco fa? Then Mandarin. 或者我们可以用中文交流，既然您说您会说中文。Finally Spanish, o tal vez español. Tengo 7 idiomas para elegir. Each transition was flawless, each pronunciation perfect. The crowd was now openly staring in amazement. Sterling's hands were shaking as he held his phone. This wasn't the viral video he'd planned to create. The deal was clear, Mr. Sterling, I said, returning to English. Perfect Swedish pronunciation of Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute with explanation. I've fulfilled both requirements. Mr. Davidson stepped forward, his face a mixture of pride and panic. Mr. Sterling, Marcus is... He's actually quite exceptional. We didn't know about his language abilities because he never mentioned them. 7 languages, Dr. Rodriguez repeated, shaking her head in wonder. At 17 years old, this is genuinely extraordinary. Sterling looked around the showroom, realizing that everyone was now staring at him expectantly. His own words, captured on his own phone, had created a legally binding public commitment witnessed by dozens of people. The car cost $2.3 million, he stammered. You made the offer, sir. Everyone here heard it. Your camera recorded it. The crowd began murmuring agreement. He definitely said he'd buy the car. The kid earned it fair and square. A deal's a deal. Sterling's face cycled through multiple emotions. Disbelief, anger, calculation, and finally something approaching respect. You're 17? Yes, sir. 7 languages? Yes, sir. Self-taught? Mostly, yes, sir. My mother helped with French. She's Haitian. The others I learned independently. Sterling stared at me for a long moment, then slowly lowered his phone. What are you planning to study in college? International Business and Linguistics at UCLA. I start in the fall. Full scholarship? Yes, sir. Another long pause. Then Sterling did something no one expected. He laughed. Not the cruel laugh from earlier, but something genuine and almost admiring. Marcus Johnson, he said slowly, I have been completely and thoroughly schooled by a 17-year-old. He turned to address the crowd, many of whom were still filming. Ladies and gentlemen, I just learned a very expensive lesson about assumptions. This young man has more intellectual curiosity and dedication than most of my Stanford MBA employees. Sterling approached me directly. Marcus, I owe you an apology. And apparently I owe you a car. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Someone shouted, He's going to do it. Another person called out, Best thing I've ever seen. But Sterling held up his hand. However, I'm going to make a counter-proposal. My heart sank. Here comes the escape clause. That Bugatti costs $2.3 million. It's beautiful, but it's also impractical for a college student. Insurance alone would bankrupt most families. He paused, pulling out his business card. Instead, I'd like to offer you something potentially more valuable. A full internship at Sterling Technologies this summer, with a salary of $25,000. When you graduate from UCLA, a guaranteed position at $120,000. Starting salary. And, he gestured to a more modest but still stunning, car in the showroom, a pristine white BMW M4, a car more. Appropriate for someone starting their career. $80,000. Fully paid for. Insurance covered for 2 years. The crowd held its breath. It was actually a more practical offer, but would I accept it? There's one more thing, Sterling continued. I want to personally fund a language learning program for underprivileged youth in Los Angeles. You'll help design the curriculum and serve as the primary instructor. We'll call it the Marcus Johnson Multilingual Academy. Dr. Rodriguez started clapping enthusiastically. That's a brilliant idea. The research shows that multilingual education dramatically improves cognitive development and economic opportunities. I looked at the BMW, then at Sterling, then at the crowd of people who had gone from mocking me to cheering for me in the span of 20 minutes. Mr. Sterling, that's an incredibly generous offer, but I have one counter-proposal of my own, his eyebrows raised. Oh, I accept everything you've offered, but I want that language program to be free for any student who qualifies, regardless of their background or financial situation. And I want it based in Inglewood where kids like me can actually access it. Sterling's smile was now completely genuine. Done. We shook hands as the crowd erupted in the loudest applause I'd ever heard. Cameras flashed and phones recorded what would become one of the most shared videos on social media that year. As Mr. Davidson handed me the keys to my new BMW, Sterling leaned close and said quietly, Marcus, I've built my career on identifying exceptional talent. You have something rare, not just intelligence, but wisdom. Don't let anyone ever convince you that you don't belong anywhere you want to be. 6 months later, the Marcus Johnson Multilingual Academy had enrolled 200 students from across Los Angeles. My story had been featured on CNN, Good Morning America, and dozens of international news outlets. The viral video of our confrontation had over 50 million views and spawned countless reaction videos and think pieces about assumptions, privilege, and hidden potential. But the most important change wasn't public recognition or career opportunities. It was the emails I received daily from young people who said my story inspired them to pursue their own dreams despite others' limited expectations. One email particularly stayed with me. From a 16-year-old girl in Detroit, Marcus. I speak 4 languages, and my teachers always told me it was a waste of time because I should focus on practical subjects. After seeing your video, I applied to international business programs. I got accepted to 3 universities with scholarships. Thank you for showing me that being different isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. As I write this, I'm finishing my sophomore year at UCLA with a 4.0 GPA. I work part-time at Sterling Technologies, where I help develop AI language learning software. The BMW still runs perfectly, though I mostly take public transportation to reduce my carbon footprint. Richard Sterling and I have become unlikely friends. He often says that our encounter taught him more about leadership than any business school ever did. He learned that true intelligence comes in unexpected packages, and real wisdom means being willing to admit when you're wrong. But more importantly, I learned something that changed everything. Your background doesn't determine your boundaries. Your circumstances don't define your capabilities. And sometimes, the moment when someone tries to make you feel smallest is exactly when you need to stand tallest. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated, remember, they're not seeing your full story yet. Keep writing it. Keep learning. Keep growing. And when the moment comes to show who you really are, don't hold back. Because you never know when someone's cruel joke might become your greatest opportunity. The languages we speak, the skills we develop, the dreams we pursue in silence, they're all preparing us for moments we can't yet imagine. Trust the process. Trust yourself. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you're not enough. Share this story if you believe in the power of perseverance. Comment below if you've ever surprised someone with abilities they didn't expect you to have. And subscribe if you want to see more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember, The most beautiful sound in any language is the word possible.